Want to know what the movers and shakers of New Hampshire's performing arts are thinking? Welcome to New Hampshire Unscripted with your host, Ray Dudley.
You okay there?
Yeah, I'm just a little, I'm just a little on the Luddite side, so a little technophobic. So we just had to download Zoom into this computer, so I'm trying to figure out.
You want to take a minute or two to get acclimated here?
I think I'm good. I don't know. Can you see me? I'm getting a lot of glare, but all right. I can see you.
Okay, that's great. So, you're new to me, so why don't we start there? Can you tell me a little bit about the circles you've traveled in and how you got to where you are? And then I'd like to talk to you about your jump into directing.
Okay. How I got to where I was. So I had, of course, done acting in high school, like so many people do, and then had gone off to college to do very serious things that didn't include time for acting. I did not end up completing that particular path, but I'd been away from it for a long time. And about somewhere in my 30s, there was a sign up in Andover, Mass, where I was working as a massage therapist. And there was a sign up for doing this play called Cry Witch, which was based upon the Salem witch trials, at which several people involved had been from what was actually, or ended up being, Andover and North Andover, Massachusetts. So I went out for that, got a decent part, and then we were singing at the after party at the director's, and I was singing something, and she's like, "You need to be in the next musical." So did Godspell with them, did Turn Back, Oh Man, which I did belt out again the other day for my auditions at the Hatbox. And not sure if that was a mistake. I popped a blood vessel in my eye, but we suffer for our art. It's like you can't sing the same at 60 or 61 as you could at...
Who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thunk it? So then it's like, wow, this is really fun. I remember liking this. And, and I had some time to do it. I went back to school. I had done an injury to my wrist that was going to be career ending. So I went back to school, and while I was getting my associates, I did a lot of theater at the Top Notch Theater in Northern Essex Community College. But as an adult, in fact, my son was also going to school there at the same time, and we acted together in several shows. Wow. Yeah, so that was fun.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. Keeps you young too, being around young people. So yeah. Then again, went back to college, finished off my degree, and had to be very serious because it was biochemistry and I didn't have time to do theater. I went back to it. But in between the two school things, did a lot of stuff with Ghostlight Theater.
Yes.
Back in its early things. I noticed that you are a many times nominated and several times winning NHTI awards. And
thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, I am.
Yeah. So congratulations on that. And after watching you recently, I can understand that. The only thing I think I've been nominated for myself was doing the sound to Ghostlight decided to do Hamlet once more, but we did it in Japanese. We did it no theater style, and I did the percussion sound that I just made up as we went along. A kind of it was one long just creative process each time we did it. With like drums and things that made different sounds. Like I found some funky sounds for the ghost and things. You'd have to ask John Safel why we did it that way, but it was very, very interesting. And probably one of the most freeing things I think I've done artistically.
That particular play and that particular instrument thing?
Yeah, and just kind of, what's the word, improvising as you went along and doing something that, as far as I know, I had never seen anyone do before, except having some sense of it from, trying to find things on YouTube about Japanese theater. And it was just actually, I guess, to give it sort of it was like doing somewhere between a Foley and an instrument.
Wow.
Like Ophelia had a dance when she was going to throw herself in the river, and whatever she did, I did things on the drums that went with it. And we did get nominated for that one, but I don't think we won. It
Hmm.
was a little, it was a little out there.
They're not still
That whole
around
show
either,
did
are
not.
they? Ghostlight, are they still around? They're not.
Well, I have heard it's gone defunct, and I was sad to hear that. Because I remember we were working very hard to get it its, um, charitable entity, designation. I sometimes have a little, just aside for me personally, I have a little noun aphasia sometimes.
Okay,
So, so I will look for words at times.
that's no problem. So
Yeah.
continue on. So there was Gaslight,
So
and when was that?
yeah, Ghostlight.
Ghost,
Ghostlight
I'm
was out
sorry.
of,
Yes,
yeah, no, that's all right. Gaslight Theater would be a whole new thing. I think they have it in Florida.
something, something Freudian there, I think.
Yes. We did a lot of stuff we did a lot of stuff. Let's see. I think it was sort of based out of Salem, New Hampshire, but we were a bit itinerant. And I know, gosh, there was an old theater that was in a public housing building or an elderly housing building. And I can never remember the name of it. It began with Anna something, and it was
Yeah, in Concord.
downtown Concord. Yes.
Yeah, the Anna Carrico.
Oh, the Anna Carrico. So we did several shows there. And a couple spaces in Manchester, sometimes Lowell, depending where we could, finagle. We didn't have a home theater anyway. And then its most recent iteration, I know for a while, it was up and running before the pandemic.
Oh,
And who was it that had taken it over? Gosh, I can picture him and I'm forgetting the name, but it has kind of tumbled by the wayside.
okay. That's
Um,
okay. I'm not asking you
yeah, I
here
don't
to
know if
talk
I
about
would
Ghostlight, but
That's true. That's true. All right. Big long ramble on that.
it's okay.
And then, so the hat box is interesting. So I did some things, and then people I had acted with at Northern Essex or people I had acted with through Ghostlight, a couple of them started directing, and, I'd get calls to come and audition, did things like the reindeer monologues and again, some other offbeat projects. And then I'd gone, my son, who I'd acted with, does devil stick things. And he and his now wife had gone to a magician's convocation or I guess convention, not a convocation, unless somebody was. So he was the opening entertainment, and she was helping out with things. They knew a magician friend up in Portland, Maine, and they met Andrew that way.
Gotcha.
Got us tickets to go see Andrew do his incredible magic show that still blows my mind. I know he's doing it. I am looking. I cannot. You can be this far away. You can't. But
In that theater, you are that far away.
Theater. Yeah, especially there. And we had seen him over at Players Ring, which again, very, very intimate space. So I'm like, oh, all right, I'll go and audition with the Hatbox. I had done some stuff with like Bedford Off Broadway. And then, so I've done open auditions at the Hatbox or gone out for a specific thing. I think how I really got back into like doing it with some real intention was auditioning for Gary Locke was doing Richard II, which was an unusual, it's not one of the most usual pieces done.
Yeah.
And I like that. There's so much more Shakespeare to do besides. Although the ones that get done a lot are done a lot because they're really good. So
Yeah, I agree.
But so did that, and I don't know. This past couple of years has been this past year has been very busy. I did the open auditions last season, and it was actually at the open auditions that Aaron Campagna approached me about doing this project that we've just done, the 7-day plays. And Gary cast me in The Government Inspector, and George Kelly was looking for someone to fill in. He was still desperately trying to fill some stuff for like that August. This was in June or July. So it was a busy year. I had like one after the other. So that's how I got in among the prolific artists. But it was a good audition, if I say so myself. And my sad thing is, since I used it last year, I'm trying to think how many years I have to wait before I can put it back in the rotation.
Just run with it.
Really, I should do it every year. So I was, I guess, very specific with some of my movements and some of the things I was doing with it. It was a piece that's uh, it's called Witch, and it's written by Margaret Atwood. Not necessarily as a play, but it's this one long, diatribe, confessional, and basically a monologue from
Okay.
the witches of the story. It was a nice piece, but yeah, I had some specific movements, and Aaron's like, "You're very specific in what you're doing when you do this." He's like, "Have you directed?" I'm like, "Oh, not since college. You do one or two one acts, of course." Um, and and he's like, "Well, would you be interested in directing?" Explain the process, and my first reaction was, "Oh, I don't know if I have the visual capability to direct, because I know things when I see them, but I have a hard time visualizing it first. Like, you should see me rearrange my living room. I have to like move everything to tell what it looks like." But and also, making the great picture, things that I've learned from I've worked with some great directors. I've worked with some directors that you've learned maybe what you don't want to do. And one of the things is, the visual aspect, which I felt maybe I was lacking or not confident in. And then I went home and I beat myself up saying, like, yourself, you either can figure it out or you can delegate to people who are good at that sort of thing.
Very important word, delegate.
So I went back and talked to him, like, so that offer's still open, because I'd really like to do that, because it is. I noticed one show I was doing not so long ago where I was experiencing a fair amount of frustration with the directing process, and I have a really expressive face. Luckily, my character is very frustrated too, so it was kind of, I could be like, it's working. And I didn't know. I was starting to wonder, I'm like, am I just getting too old and grumpy? Because all the younger actresses are like, yep, okay, and and nodding, going along with it. Although a couple of them told me their secret is you say yes and then you do it the way you want to. And,
Okay.
and I'm not a good dissembler. Everything's like, but and I'm like, yeah, maybe it's time to try directing. Put your money where your mouthy ideas are, and try that out. Also, frankly, there become to be a limited number of roles for older women. Mary Fraser and I have gotten to be friends, but we often do need to compete. We kind of occupy the same niche in the theater world, so there'll often be something for one of us and not the other. Although we have worked together in Holy and Unruly, David Beardsley's play, when Donald Tung's group, I want to say World Theater.
New World Theater.
New World Theater. They did a workshop version of it, and Mary and I did that. So we got to be in the same show. We were both cast in Government Inspector, but she had to, she had a lot going on. She had too much overlap, and she was going to get to play Mrs. Hudson to her daughter's Miss Holmes. So, and was trying to juggle it all, and, dropped out. So we didn't get be together. And then we just went and auditioned for something else. We're both going to get in, and she realized she had a conflict that wasn't going to work. But anyway, so Mary and I often occupy the same niche. There's often just one part. It's rare to be in a show that's got a lot. So, realistically, if I want to keep doing like a show every, at least 4 times a year, you have to look at how else can I. And I have joined the board of a production company, Lend Me a Theater.
You have?
Which is another itinerant company.
Yeah.
I had done Clue.
Mo Demers, right?
Yeah, Mo Demers, right. Now she's a Spitfire. So everyone recognizes Mo. So you say either one or the other. And we're doing some interesting. I'm on the play reading committee, I think mostly because I have time and I read really fast. And we're, in fact, we're going to be doing Night Mother and Into the Breaches at Hatbox this year.
Wow.
And we usually, and Night Mother's already got people coming out of the woodwork going, hey, so one of the auditions, one of meaty roles.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because, they're coming up is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I know, I thought, Thank God that somebody's finally stepping up to the plate here and doing things that are classics and great roles and great plays. So, Night Mother,
Yep.
hats off to them. Man, oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, personally for me, it's a little heavy. And but I know like there's a lot of people want to do it, and I think it's a great piece. It's not something that you can whip together in 6 weeks though. So they're going to start early on that one because
Good luck
there
to
is
them.
just so much to get into them. Yeah. And it is, and even though I know that often comedies sell better, but I think this one will do well too. I know, listen to me, but from the production end, you want butts in the seats.
Yeah. Exactly
So
right.
it's one of the few modern tragedies. So, and sometimes we have to, acknowledge the tragedy,
Mhm.
catharsis of
Well, that's part
theater.
of life, right? I mean, it's a
Also.
reality. So,
Right, right.
you have a very
So,
interesting arc here. You said that you had started off, you did some stuff in high school, and
mhm.
there was no like light or flame there about you just kind of brushed it off that you did it. I didn't catch that early
Oh,
on there was a bug that had attached itself to you.
well, oh, that's true. Actually, I'll have to tell you, the bug actually goes way back, way back. We moved a lot when I was a kid. So my sister and I were often the only people we knew, for at least a little while, until school started. And we moved about every year for a while. My dad was not in the service, but he was on loan to the service for Raytheon. So it was like being Army kids. Um, so we would act things out. She'd make little puppets. We'd do puppet shows for our parents, our poor long-suffering parents. And she was about, I don't know, 5.5 years older than me. So she was 5 years ahead in school. And when she started getting reading Shakespeare, those lovely penguin Shakespeares where it's got the text on one side and all the unusual words on the other.
Mm.
So I would read them and we would act things out. We had this rock in the woods across the street from our house in one place where we would go and we would do the witches scene from Macbeth and we would
Wow.
do Romeo and Juliet's balcony scene, just silliness. But it was anyway, it was fun. I liked it.
Star was being born back then. Wow.
Yeah. And then it's like, hey, look, like you can do this again later. I like I would like to do I've done some like workshops, but I've never done any formal training other than when I was involved at Top Notch Theater at Northern Essex, of course, since it was a school and Charlene Kennedy and Susan Sanders were running the department then, and they took the educational aspect of it reasonably, even for those of us who were not theater students, but just other students at the school. So you learn some things. And then a lot of it is observation. I would like to do I think I'm a good actress. I know I'm not a great actress. Let's put it this way. When I turned them down to do this, to do the directing part at first, they didn't say, oh, well, then do you want to act in it? So,
Are you reading tea leaves here? What?
I do okay. I'm not as good as I want to be, and who is? And, as far as like this new thing of directing, I have a lot of ideas. I have no idea if it's going to be good. Some things and what I discovered was being on the play reading committee. When I was reading these plays, sometimes you read them and I'm sure you've had this experience. You're reading a play and you're there's a part of you that's going over, how would you play that part? Or how
Absolutely.
would you?
All the time.
Right. Right. So that often does it. Well, I recently read a play for our play reading committees, and I have asked if I can direct it. I have not heard back yet. Into the Breaches, where when I was reading it, I didn't want to do any of the parts. I wanted to do like all the parts, or I wanted to move the parts around. I wanted to, it just spoke to me in a different way. So, and I don't know though what I have found though is I'll have an idea, it'll speak to me in a certain way. You do a thing, and then later you're like, huh, is the thing really the right thing? Do we pull the thing back? Do we do a different thing? And you start, I think somebody put it as you start killing your favorites sometimes because it's like, is that in there just because I find it? So when I directed one of the one acts back in college, and when I say college, this is my second time through, and I'm 35 years old. So have some life experiences, just not really a lot of theater experiences. But one of my actors that I had for a one act, and what I did was Aria da Capo, which is by Edna St. Vincent Millay. She apparently wrote a couple plays as well as poems, and I liked her poetry. So I don't know. I came across this, and it was odd and funky, and again, not done all the time. And I discovered that one of my actors was also a tumbler. So I managed to insert a tumbling thing into the show, mostly because it was so cool. And I realized though, because it was one of those things where it wasn't no, play in 7 days, but I think it was like maybe a 3 or 4 week process. It was still pretty shortened. And I realized that had I been doing it longer, I might have pulled it out because I'm watching it, especially when it goes up, and I'm like, well, that's cool, but it really doesn't do anything to tell the story.
It's very good
It's not
insight.
advancing the story.
Yeah, it's heroic too to admit that.
Oh, I don't
Well,
know.
because you could have just brushed over that story, but to admit that you may not have should have put that in,
Right.
it's very heroic.
Oh, I don't know. So that's what if I continue with with directing and get to do more, I don't know. So a lot of times when I'm doing things as an actress and I make choices, and especially if I'm doing comedy and somewhat broad comedy, I can be fairly outrageous, and sometimes you count on the director to pull you back if they need to.
Yeah.
And most of them like that because they find that easier than trying to push you. But I have worked with at least one director where he's like one of the most outrageous people I know, and I can't trust him to pull me back. So as a director, I'm afraid I'll do this stupid thing again, like let's put that in just because it's really cool. But it should always, always be in the service of telling the story, I think. And that's really how I come to theater, I think, is just it's through stories. I love to read. Reading's like, been my thing since I was like 4. So a well-written play really grabs me. Really good dialogue really grabs me. Logical holes throw me. For instance, so A Christmas Carol is done all the time, right? And we get in the beginning that Marley's been dead for 7 years. And later on, we get that Scrooge, once upon a time, was in love with Belle, who may have been a bit younger than him, because this was either, like Victorian or Edwardian England. Or even earlier, could be Georgian. Anyway, but we find later on, after he's broken up with Belle, that Belle has remarried someone. She's usually shown with a child and a baby bump. And her husband comes home and says, "Guess who I just saw? Your old friend Scrooge. His partner has just died this day, and there he sits alone in his workshop." And my first thought is, that was just 7 years ago, and she was Scrooge's contemporary anyway. Shouldn't her womb be an echoing, dusty cavern by now, and not holding a baby? But unfortunately, nobody's ever seen it that way in a show I've been in.
There may be some material there to write, to flesh out.
I know they have done. Recently, Donald Tongue did a piece called Scene Changes, which was based on an actress playing Mrs. Cratchit in a traveling.
I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah, with Alex Picard.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Who we are going to see this coming weekend in Virginia Woolf.
Yeah.
And her work astounds me, just astounds me.
I can't wait to see the show.
Yeah, and it's a powerful piece. And I've seen people try to do the Virginia Woolf, some of the lines, some of the monologues as monologues for auditions, and it's hard to rev it up and get it there, and yet make it seem natural in just a monologues. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what Alex can do with that.
Yeah.
And with having the whole show to it's just going to be.
She's surrounded by some really good people too.
Yes. I think the only thing I've seen Brett and Reese in was Holmes and Watson, that Gary also did. And the young woman, I would have to look, I should have it up somewhere, the thing. And I'm wondering if she was in the 2-person show with Katie Collins.
The one that played at the Bank of New Hampshire? Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't remember.
And then they live streamed it. Yeah, and then they ended up live streaming it. It was a really
Oh, I
interesting
didn't know
show.
that. I would have watched it. I didn't know that.
Right. And that's what I had to do because I was in a show, I was in a show the weekend that it was going up at the thing. Yeah, I don't remember how I heard it. Oh, probably social media.
Mm. So
Uh,
about the directing thing for this show, a couple of things I'm interested in. How intimidated were you to be asked to direct a play you've never read, actually hadn't even been written when you were asked, with a cast that you didn't know you would end up with? You had to have some trepidation there, and I'll leave that there. I'll go part two in a second. Go ahead.
okay, so there was some trepidation. I saw the cast list, and a part of me though was, so I can sometimes be overly optimistic about and yet I'm also, I can be fairly confident about what I can do, and if it doesn't work, well, it's not life or death.
Yeah, yeah,
I've had jobs that are more life or death. So, um, but oh my God, looking at the list of actors that they had pulled, there's part of me, it's like, you don't really have to do anything. You just kind of wind them up and let them go. But it was the thought of directing some of those folks was intimidating. The two people I did end up directing, I've been in shows with, and I just think that they can be comic geniuses, both of
yeah.
them, Dwight Stearns and Valerie Kerr. But I've always, enjoyed working with them too. So I had some idea of what they could do. But right, I didn't know at first which one to get. I did know by the time we got there, I knew that Gary was going to be one of the writers for us newbies, and I trust Gary to come up with something interesting, at least.
Understatement alert. Understatement alert.
And fairly erudite. Challenging, maybe a little too challenging, because when I read his show, my first thought was, oh my God, poor Ian. Can we get Gary to cut some of this? And I've worked with Ian before. I never worked with Melanie, who was first up in that show. And then at first, I think Lowell Williams was going to write for this, and had a travel conflict, couldn't be there. And Gary and Greg Parker ended up being the other experienced writer writing for us newbie directors. And I've seen and read some of Greg's work. And again, another very erudite person, very creative. And he ended up writing this silly little comedy that I just thought was adorable because I could hear it in my head as soon as I started reading it. So I kind of lucked out because I really went with, there's a part of that's like, wow, I can hear this in my head as I'm reading it. I can see it. Obviously we did some collaborative stuff. The assistant stage manager they had for the project, Sandra, was my stage manager. And she's almost frighteningly competent at an awful lot of things. And including she's got
I will agree with
good,
that. That was yes.
Yes. Like, I'm glad she's on our side.
Yeah.
And she also is good at some collaborative ideas, and she's kind of learning to fly more freely with this creative process while bringing to it some really like impressive organizational skills, which is not my strongest point. So it was good, and I did warn her that I would maybe be leaning on her for time management, but we managed. I will say with the 7-day plays, I don't think we may not have actually had as much, what's that thing I go to? Rehearsal. Not as much rehearsal time almost as you do in the 24-hour plays, because, from like 9 a.m. until 7 p.m, you could be rehearsing for those. And we only had an hour and 45 minutes, hour and a half at each rehearsal, which was good. They're short plays, a couple in them, but I'm used to slightly longer rehearsal time, with just the plot of time you were there. So the first couple of nights, it was hard for me to pull back and know when, okay, let's wrap it up and, make sure people have their 3-minute reminder of what we're doing the next day and all. And then Sandra wrote these. I have to confess, I had never read a rehearsal report before. I've never seen one like that. Yeah.
I got one from her and I'm like, what the? It was incredibly competent. It was detailed. It was It was like she was a court stenographer.
Yes. Like, not only did she catch all the blocking, which I would expect a stage manager to do, although I'm used to them, scribbling on the sides of the thing, but linear, and the notes you gave to any notes you gave to the actors, often they note it down, but if it's on the fly, they don't know.
Or she
We had to
timestamped
work
some of
hard.
those.
Yes, she did.
On my sheet, it's like 6:35. Note to Ray.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen anything. It was amazing. I mean, at first I was just like, just like taking. It took me a moment actually to find it as useful as it really was, because I think I was just so amazed in the beginning. Like, this exists. People do this. People can do this. How did she do this?
I was expecting like a sticky note.
I mean, I'm used to, you get a little reminder text maybe saying, remember that we're doing, Act 2 tomorrow or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wonderful and astounding, and it made it easier. And I have to say, I know stage managing is important, and you know that in your head. And one of the things that I am concerned about directing again is sometimes you can pick your stage manager, sometimes you can't. And the good ones are awful hard to find. She told me she's booking up into 2024, because I asked her, so do you do this for other folks? Yeah. So, and which is maybe when I'd be looking to tag her anyway, but
get it early.
Get it early. More stuff on stage though too. She's actually going to be appearing at Bedford Off Broadway. I think the second and third weekend in June as a performer.
Really?
In a small. I
think I heard her say that.
Yeah. So yeah, she was, and that was. Gosh, that is probably one of the things I really love about doing theater, doing this project here, where, oh my gosh, it's like, all these people you want to fangirl over who are going to be there. And I had a very similar experience doing Gary's show, The Government Inspector, which had like Alex Picard was in that. Chris Savage was in it, doing a small but really integral part. Aaron was in it. Sven and Dwight was in it. Val was in it. Aaron Wilcox, Ian Allen. And watching all these people every day, and it was a broad comedy. It's based on the Russian play by Gogol, and it was updated by, I think, Jeffrey Hatcher. So, it's fairly funny. And speaks to things that have always been true about people, like that there's greed and people like to appear to be more than they are, and a number of other things. Although it wasn't very kind to the peasants of Russia. But going to this rehearsal every day was probably it was like going to theater camp all the time. And an acting class. You're sitting here watching these people just do this phenomenal job. And I'm a shameless stealer of any technique that I that I like. And laughing so hard, I've never laughed so hard. And what I love about the community theater scene in New Hampshire, which I like mostly speak to, is how rare ego is. I mean, I think we all have a fair amount of confidence, and you kind of have to get up there and strut your stuff on the stage in one way or another. But these people have so much talent and so little ego, just so anyone who does like hold back and not want to really interact with people is usually, that's their own thing of how they prepare for their show, and they're in their heads. There's no sense of, oh, you've only been doing community theater, because like the only professional theater I've done is the little bit you get paid at the Hat Box at times, or at the Players Ring. I've done a show at the Players Ring. But it's just, I don't know. So you get to meet all these interesting people, and most of them have some other outside job that's also interesting.
Yeah.
And I can be a little bit of an intellectual snob, and I truly feel that a lot of people who are really intelligent people make better actors. I know somebody's going to be like, I'm not talking eugenics here, but so not only are these people brilliant to watch, but so very interesting and brilliant to speak to on any number of things, and usually just so funny. I
love to watch the creative process in action. That was one of the reasons why
Mm.
I was enamored with this whole 7 day thing and seeing the people who were involved in every aspect, from the writers to the directors to the performers,
Yeah.
because it was very creative from the start. They had to create a play. They had to direct this new play. They had to perform this new play. And all of these
Hmm.
people were 100% in and
Yes.
ready to just create. There was no template here. They just were jumping in and creating. It was wonderful to watch. I mean, I was enamored backstage. I
Yeah.
was a fanboy.
Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't it? I mean, just, ah, the writing would terrify me.
Yeah, I'm with
Trying
you.
to come up with a play in 20, that would be terrifying. If anyone asked me to do that, it'd be like, no. And I love to read, and I know how long it takes me to write. I used to write for a living for a newspaper, and it's like, and I've tried writing fiction. Poems are my favorite because they either come or they don't. Um, but it's like, no, I know what a struggle it is. And then it's like, oh my God. And then you hear it out loud, and it's like, what was I thinking? And you can't go back and rewrite it. It's gone. It's gone
My
past you,
biggest
or
fear
at
about
least,
writing would be they'd say go, and I would instantly have writer's block instantly.
yeah, like
The
nothing.
pressure would kill me.
I know. And all of these were so creative. And interestingly, talking to the writers, the two that did the comedies, Greg and Carrie L. Silk, did not initially intend to write comedies, but that's what came out. You're starting the process. Greg said he had started at least 3 or 4 times, and it
Oh,
just kept wanting to. He was going to do it in a different way, more noir, but not the comedy. But I think you come down to, I mean, it's a teddy bear.
I-
You know?
it was great.
I'm not sure if we can play it like Cocaine Bear or something, but but I did give him a little ciggy butt hanging out of his mouth. So,
That was perfect. That was perfect. Let me ask you a
right, there
question.
wasn't much.
Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
No, just
No, I was
about
gonna say,
yourself,
okay.
and directing. How would you? What type of a director would you say you are? Are you a micro director where you see everything on stage and it has to be done in a certain way? Or are you more of a throw it up there, let's see what can happen, and we can tweak it from there? Or are you somewhere in that spectrum?
Oh, that is a good question. I tend to, what I really did love about doing this, and I do like doing some stuff by the seat of your pants. It's like jamming on stage,
Mm.
and where the music rolls with you and you just go with it. That whole week was like some like mad jazz thing.
It's an excellent
Um,
analogy.
yeah, because it's got to go together, and yet you have to be willing to kind of let it fly a little
Mhm.
bit because or it seems so. So as a director, well, I really didn't know how I'd be as a director. I can be. I knew how I didn't want to be. I knew some of the things I like. I usually sometimes you kind of hear how you want to say it, but I really kind of hate when people are given line readings or to give a line read. I don't really like to give line readings, not that specific,
Mhm.
but I'm also more likely to go, okay, can you try it with a little more of something in it? If I want more or less or a little anger or, I want to kind of hear two things. And then mostly I want you to make me believe it. Um,
Thank you. That's a key point. Very key. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm a fairly naturalistic sort of actress myself. And so I've been told from people who've watched me, although, if you're doing sometimes comedy is more, I guess what I like about comedy is I can feel the rhythm. And when it's going right and you got the audience with you and you're doing the thing, and it just, there's a rhythm to it.
Yeah.
It's very almost musical like. It's all in the timing, you know, and drama. I think can be much more spread out what to do. So I also talked to some directors and had some ideas, and I've been told by so many people that you should block it first. So one of the things I did do, and in that way, it kind of was what I wanted to see, was when I walked in there by Monday to do our read through. We did our read through, and we talked a little about what the character should sound like. It was obvious to me that the bear should sound like Sam Spade or something very like it. Dwight had not heard that. So we tried some things, and I ended up having to send him a sound clip, actually, saying it's big to get. But actually, what finally connected, because we're doing, I'm like laconic and kind of no extra, not a lot of variation in tone. I'm like Joe Friday, just the facts, man. That he had seen, that he had seen, so that could talk to him. So, I guess I like to cajole or add things. I also find that, and of course the people we were working with that week, and gosh, people I've worked with and all sorts of, I'm just always blown away by the talent that's out there. People often come up with their own business, but if they don't, I usually have some business idea to throw in there. I like business. But a lot of times they find their own, but because a lot of people, and I'm still not sure how I'd feel about always in the beginning, I've tried working with people who are like, well, let's just get it on his feet and see. And I'm okay with that too. Personally, working with it, I like to get my lines before I get my blocking. But so many people like to, in fact, I like to, if I can get hold of the script beforehand, I like to fairly have my lines before I walk in. And partly is that with age, and also I had an oxygen accident many years ago. Memory ain't what it used to be. So
Maybe there.
Yeah. Well, as my biochemistry professor explained to me, it just takes, you have to phosphorylate those places in your brain more times, and it just takes a little longer because all the systems a little slower. But anyway, where was I?
No, it's okay.
What kind of director I am?
Yeah.
So so one of my problems is I'm not very linear. This is why I need a good stage manager. So I'm not the most linear of directors. That's why I did try to, and actually I took my chessboard and little chess pieces and moved them around on it when I was trying to block this out because of I need a visual for my visual. And then I storyboarded part of it just to see if it was kind of going to work. And then, when we're working it, they add things or we take something out because, well, that's not going to work. Right. So I'm fairly experimental, I would say, but I want my actors to feel safe. And for more actors than I realized, it just never occurred to me before, but in talking to people in how they like to work or listening to people kvetch about, how the directing's going and whatever show we're working on, a lot of people feel safer if they have their blocking and then they lock their dialogue into their blocking. I would also say I really love a good debate or argument. So if I had an idea about something or if I gave a direction, I would expect that if my actors, because I'm supposed to know the whole show, they are going to be the experts on their particular character, and they might see something that I didn't notice because I'm busy looking at blah, 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 blah. And I might care. I might care what they've noticed and put in. There might be times where I'm like, I don't care because it just doesn't fit. Or you keep that in your, in your backstory. And so I try to be collaborative. Like it's an important thing. And also because I can't think of everything, and like when we did this show, other people were coming up, we had some things, like the high chair. I hadn't thought of the high chair. I knew there was a problem, with Teddy on the regular chair. Val had to keep bending over him or crouching and at feet. I didn't like it for Val, as the actress, as the look, and also she's going to freaking kill her back doing this. And I didn't like it for the character either. It didn't fit the character choice. And we're like, oh, can we get him a little higher? And she's like, high chair. And I'm like, yes. And we both pictured a wooden high chair, hard to find. A friend of hers was going to lend her one, and it was one of those plastic kinds with the padding, with the baby pattern on it and all. And I can't believe I wrote this about a bear, but I wrote, I think that this will infantilize our character. And then I'm like, it's a stuffed bear. Can you possibly infantilize it any further? But you can. That's why we, machoed him up with the cigarette and the hat. But
speaking of cigarettes, there is a great bit in there. Is that written in? I think I talked to Dwight last night, and I can't remember if he said it was written in by Greg. It was. Okay. How was that?
What Greg had put, and I kept this. There it is.
So this is how old I'm getting. I just spoke with Dwight last night, and
that's funny, and you can't remember. See, but you recorded it, so you didn't have to remember it. You can just
Uh,
look it up. Yeah, so it says all of Dwight's characters should be, if possible, voracious chain smokers who leave cigarettes everywhere. The stage should be littered with them by the end. So a couple things occurred to me this. My first thought when I read it, and I did write there, like, if you have any questions for the authors, and I did ask about one thing, and I said, and is he serious about the cigarettes, or is he just like busting somebody's chops? Is he trying to annoy Andrew or whoever has to clean the stage? So I'm like, sure, why not? Let's go with it if we can do it. I kind of see what he's wanting to do, and to me, it was kind of a challenge of figuring out how can we do this.
yeah.
So we had the two fake cigarettes that look like they got the little reflective end, so it looks like they're on. So he would have one of those, and Ted had one of them. And then Val had a cigarette. One of the lines in it was she was holding a cigarette that she never smoked. So
Yes.
she's holding it through most of the show. She's not smoking it. Meanwhile, all of his characters. So I'm like, how do we do this? I just had to go and get some cigarettes and then break them off. And we just decided with the one at the Hat Box, we could just break them off when we were performing. And I just went through them and, at different points. And I'm like, and at one point, look like you're lighting your butt with your next butt, because that's what chain smokers do. And yeah, he just palmed a bunch of them. At first we weren't sure if we could do it. And when we were practicing at Presidential Oaks, since they are so kind to us there, and Hatbox wants to keep using them, the last thing I wanted to do was leave a trail of tobacco all across the things. So I came home and when we were talking about how are we going to do this, and we brainstormed, during one of our sessions. So I did try originally like breaking some off and then lighting them. Made the mistake of puffing on one to do that. That was a disaster. But so they'd become black. And then I dipped them in Elmer's glue to try to seal the end so they wouldn't like spit. What you call it? Well, but I burnt them and they stink. So we decided we'll leave off the Elmer's glue and the burning of them. And I just, broke them off, then put out some of the stuff and then twisted up the end so they could scatter around but not be everywhere. Yeah. And I'm still not sure exactly, because I did not ask the playwright, what exactly were you going for here? But I think part of it was a shtick. And it's nice to have a shtick.
Yeah.
And it was an action that could be there, but it said something about all those characters. And that was one reason why his last character, JJ, who in the beginning I wanted to appear as innocuous and innocent as possible, the one who's actually set up this whole sting on her, but he's like, hey, I'll come help you, which is why we, put him in the little sweater vest and glasses. But so he doesn't take out his cigarette until he makes that turn on, my mother was away and he found my mother on a hike and she never came back, and now he's got the cigarette. I don't know. I'm just like, okay, we'll roll with the cigarette symbolism. And like, at the end, I finally thought of it at the end, kind of, I'm like, Val, before you leave your last time on stage, I want you to grind out his cigarette. I'm like, we can't do it now because we need that one for the show. But at the end of the show, you hunt it down and you grind it out and then you leave.
Well, it was a great bit. I mean, to see him come out and he's throwing these butts around stage.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't quite go through the whole pack, but I think he had at least like 10 or 12 butts for him to do that. And then the thing in the stage direction in the show had suggested a bottle in a paper bag for his character. But Dwight owns this jug that is named Jug that you saw on stage with the 3 X's. And it often shows up on stage, like the last show he was in, Don't Talk to the Actors, it was on stage as a set dressing. And it's been, I think we used it for one of our murder mysteries. And so it's like, yeah, bring Jug instead. Why not? Make it his own. And then he's coming up with some things. They all are.
Very well done. Very well done.
Oh, thank you.
Kudos. So let me ask you, so you go through all the rehearsals and now you, Saturday comes, you do your tech. I kind of watched your tech. I don't think you had many problems in there. You just with the matter of staging, like where the headstone went, some of that stuff, right? It wasn't.
Right. Because we found the area we were working on, what I had not taken into account, because I know pretty much how big the hat box is. But if you've got people on the floor, and Dwight was going to end up on the floor wrestling. So I actually went and sat in the back thing. Sandra sat in the front, and I tried to look over and see, and we marked how far back we had to put Dwight's head, because at the end, Teddy snaps his neck, and
Right.
Dwight was like working that. And I'm like, we cannot lose that. They have to see that. So, right, there's some technical, a couple of times, the voiceover started a little late, and I had sent Greg, I wasn't really sure how I was supposed to send him the sound files. So this was a thing that had a whole long thing in it. And I'm like, the second selection from, and I gave him, the timestamp from there to there, as long as you need, and then the ending one. And he decided he'd put the whole thing underneath it. It was his, and I loved that idea because, yeah, it's a noir film. It actually should have this little, moody jazz bit going on under the whole thing. And I'm always happy if I can play jazz for any reason, because I can't actually play jazz. I can only listen to it. So I like that, but we had to, just mess around a little with, like, a really perky song came on in the cemetery.
I remember
scene,
that in tech, and you're like, Greg, not working.
Yeah, that's not working for me, the perky one there, but to bring it in, it was the only place where it didn't quite work. And I think he just moved on to another section of it and came down there because, Dwight had his big monologue as JJ and the thing to get through it. The only thing about that play was I really wish Val had like more to do, or maybe
besides
she had
talking
a character
to a bear
that she
all the time.
Yeah, besides talking to a bear and then having to move it around, which she did beautifully. Oh my God, she killed me in rehearsal when they get to put the scripts down and do her thing. Her face when she was in the West Virginia scene and with the outhouse and et cetera, et cetera. And she was just making the most that Dwight actually stopped, came out of character and asked her, "Do I stink?" Because he was afraid he had gotten too sweaty doing all this running around and changing and everything. And I'm like, no, Dwight, your character stinks. She's just acting really, really well.
It was a great scene. It was his accent too when he comes out. The whole thing was just well done. Just well done.
Yeah,
so
he said that Ned was the one that he got.
You guys were up first, coming out of the box.
Yeah.
Were you nervous before it went up? And then tell me about the audience bought in right away. The lights came up and the teddy bear just sold the whole thing right away. So you guys brought the audience in. They came for the ride. And then tell me about, were you nervous before? And then listening to the audience reaction, how did you feel? And then did you get to talk to the audience after?
Did I get to talk? So was I nervous before? Oh, of course I was. I was nervous in some ways for my actors, because that is not very much time to get dialed, and, even I think they did a line through. We didn't get to do a full run after our tech because the tech did take a little while, and it's kind of long. And it's a tech heavy show. As Greg said, Greg, the tech director, was pretty pissed at Greg, the writer, by the time we were done. So I was nervous for them that they were going to have to do this thing a little bit. I was also nervous that, because to me, I have to say that the whole process seemed too easy, almost. So there was part of me is like, oh, did I do a half-assed job? I mean, and did I forget something? Like, shouldn't this have been harder?
Mm.
But like I said, I could hear the show in my head. And then I'm wondering, well, did I take too obvious choices? Did I make too obvious choices? Did I not delve into this enough? So there was something of like, did I really, did I do the process justice? And did I do the show justice? I wasn't too worried about, we could only do what we could do. I was fairly pleased with the flow of the show. And there are some places where the voiceover is a little long. And other than, there's nothing we could do about that except try to, and part of that, and some of the choices, I was worried that some of the choices I had made, I was pleased with the acting choices my actors had made. Some of the things that I had wanted to throw in, and like, am I adding to, am I taking away? Like, Val at one point kind of leans towards him with the cigarette, as one does, right? And then kind of realizes that he ain't going to be lighting this thing. I don't know if anybody else caught that, but she did that. It was something I didn't like, am I, asking her to do something that people are just going to wonder, what the hell is she doing? So there was that a little, but the only thing that made me nervous really was that I wasn't more nervous.
Mm.
or that I wasn't more, because like I said, it was just fun. It was fun. It was, I think it worked, but I was a little, because I did take the play that when we were talking about which one to do, and Mary and I were talking about, well, how will we choose? Well, what if we, both love the same one? And we're like, okay, we can do rock, paper, scissors. This is not going to be a problem. But doing it, when I said the first thing I thought of is, wow, could Gary cut a few lines? And she's like, oh, I love the thing about Mozart. And I'm like, the other one I could hear in my head. But, when we were thinking which one to do, I'm like, well, do I do the one that is like obvious to me? Or do I do the more challenge, what to me is a more challenging one, and see what I can do with that? And then we decided, well, why don't we do the one we're each just drawn to? Because we have a week. Because there's
point.
that too.
Yeah.
What are you going to like dig and delve in a week? So it was, there are a couple of things, but it was really well in play. I mean, I would have had to actively work a lot harder at it than I was working to like F this up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. You had a great script and a great cast, and a great tech guy. I mean, it worked. And again, the audience loved it. I was backstage, but you could hear them roaring. I mean, they were in on every gag. All
yes,
along
and
the way.
even the butts flying. I mean, they caught that. The
teddy bear thrown in the air and coming back down on him. Brilliant.
Dwight. I mean, that's Dwight. We talked about some things and, with the fight, but I also knew that Dwight was going to because I've seen some of like I said, I worked with him on Clue. He was Colonel Mustard to my Mrs. Peacock. And the work that he and Aaron did in The Government Inspector, they were these two country gentlemen, but just a lot of physical humor, it had to be experienced. I can't do it justice at all describing it. So I knew, but yes, and that was my favorite part. And that was one thing where each time he's doing it, I'm like, yes, do the thing and have it work. He was worried at first because he was, all you saw the cavernous hall that we were working in over at the other place. So, and he had done this tossing thing and it was fantastic. And yes, the bear landing on him like this, like something out of like, world wrestling.
Exactly what I thought.
It just really sold it. And the fact that he could just fall down to the ground from there, he would do it and he would just like that is something that I would have hesitated to ask an actor to do. So I'm really glad I didn't like really give him blocking on that, except you fight with the bear.
Yeah.
And whatever he did. And if I needed to come up with something, but, it was kind of in the script where, Ted's choking him where he says, but I shot you, but other than that, it was all free form. So yeah, that bear thing, that was my very favorite. That and the neck snap. I've watched a lot of, Angel and Buffy shows. There's a lot of neck snap. Love a good neck snap. So I wasn't, gosh, I wish I could say that, wow, I was really scared and it all worked. I wasn't. Maybe I should have been. Maybe I'm too stupid to get scared, but it was just too much fun to be real nervous. Like I said, I was nervous about them, dropping lines, so they did. And I don't care if they did. And some stuff was even added lines, especially if they were really running with a character or a little paraphrasing, I'm okay with. And, if the playwright's not okay with it, too bad, it's been done.
Well, at the end of it, the audience loved it. It set the tone for the day. It was just, it was brilliant to put it there. It's a brilliant piece to put there. And it just married the whole day together. Yeah,
I think Aaron and Mary did a great, great job at setting up the 4 plays. We had two comedies, and I'm a big believer in leave them laughing if you can. I know there's catharsis in tears and there's catharsis in pain. Your show is a very cathartic show, but there is in laughter too. And there's also, it just does wonderful physiological things to people. Yeah. Plus, boy, that's such a good reward though, as an actor though, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And I have to say it is just as rewarding from the directing point. But yes, you are kind of looking around. I did ask my husband several times, well, did you like that part? Did you like this part? And, of course, everybody that you talk to, your friends or whatever, or other people you see, well, that was wonderful. It's like when I used to ask my son, does this look okay? He's like, uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's like I could put on a plastic bag and you would tell me it looked okay.
Family,
But
family and friends.
children, the only thing that'll fill you with true regret. The lines in that show were so good. All the shows were so good. It was, I really hope they do it again. And now I'm like, well, but I can't be a new time director and I won't be experienced enough to be an experienced director. It was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful seeing what the experienced directors did with their stuff, your show, watching the changes in your thoughts and in your feelings when you were sitting on that bench in the part where you were by yourself, or I think Kuna Lisa was listening to you, but
Yeah.
it's basically
Right.
a monologue. The time that you took with all of that, what you allowed us to see, because of course that's the wonderful thing about the Hatbox. It would not have worked the same way, of course, in
Yeah.
a giant auditorium. Well, then we have to, do that thing that I call there's like a arch theater in this to it that I really love these little theaters because you can be more natural.
I'm spoiled by them.
Yeah, and that was something that I knew was missing in my show. There were some places where you had to see it on Val and she had to do it and she did some great work with her face and the poor thing kind of had to because she's got these long monologues that she's sort of reacting to but has to do
Yeah.
stuff. But it didn't fit with the kind of show I did and I don't think it would have fit. But I don't know, I'm not saying things like that. And it could be very well be that something like that would fit somewhere if I only knew, So there's some things where I'm like, I just don't know enough. Like, I don't know much about tech and what is available and what could you do with it. So when we were running tech and he asked, do you want a blackout or do you want a blue up? And I'm like, well, I think I want a blackout because it says black and goes, and I realized one, we can't see, but I also decided that, yeah, I liked the blue because in the times when the characters are not on stage and there was at least we had too long voiceovers with the stage in view and just the stage is in view and I thought that at least having the blue light on it will hold the audience's attention a little more as well as the words and then the long blue and I knew that would have to I wanted that to be blue and it fade out when Dwight/JJ is laying on the stage dead. I'm not letting him get up to the end. So I like the blue. But when I was asked which one I wanted, I had no reference to, again, until I actually saw it. So I am not great at imagining things all the time.
Mm.
I'm good at recognizing things when I see them. And that's what makes me nervous, maybe about directing a full length play. And just that part of the inexperience. And I don't really want to work with somebody hovering over my shoulder, though, being like, well, you should direct this way or that way, or putting their own imprint on it. Because it's like, no, I'm opinionated enough. I want to direct it this way. But just not knowing stuff. So one thing I did talk to Greg about, and we're fine, is just one of these, I just want to pick his brain. Just how do you consider what goes in what's out there, what's available, what can I think about as visual effects or sound effects when I'm or what can the Hatbox do? And it seems it can do with this QLab thing, they can do everything.
Pretty much,
and,
right?
I've worked with, they use projections. We use a lot of projections in Christmas Carol, which add a whole other media thing to it.
Is that the one with Eric Hodges?
Setting up this.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I seen that one. I liked it a lot. The projections were wonderful.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Did you come this year?
No.
Was it this year or last year?
Yeah, I think I went
a couple of years
pre-pandemic, I think.
Oh, because I'm wondering if I was in any of the ones you saw.
I don't recall. But I was stunned by what they could do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those things are very, very. They did some funky stuff with it this time, especially when the ghosts appear and all. They can do some interesting movements. And it can be the outside. Now it's, a wall in Scrooge's place. Now it's the outdoor things. Now it's the ghost disappearing into a bunch of crows or something. It does some funky things.
Yeah.
But the screen itself, the text is really annoying. I've got really strong fingers, so a lot of times I'm the one who ends up doing that. And plus I can be really, really patient in that I will not give up on doing something until it is done. So persistence is a thing. So yeah, when I think about using them, there's a part of me that goes, do I want to set them up? But they're really cool. But do I want to set them up?
So the play is over. Can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about, and you have in one sense, what did you learn? Because as a first time director, it's one of the things that was high priority was what are you going to get out of
Right.
this besides a play? And as you look back now, I mean, 5 days at an hour and 45 minutes is not a lot. And if you now once you've seen it, were there things that you're like, oh man, if I just had 2 more hours or a couple more days, we could have tweaked this or that? And what did
Yes.
you learn? You did speak already about lighting and talking with Greg about things that are
Sure.
happening. So as a director, for a time, how was your
Mhm.
growth arc there? How do you feel you came out of this?
Well, like I said, there's a part of me that's like, did I like miss something important? Because one of the things that came out of it going is, this directing gig ain't too bad. Um, Boy, in some ways it's less pressure than acting. At the end of especially, a week to do a show. Um, Man, I've got a show that I'm coming up that we open first weekend in June, and my lines are not where I want them to be.
I
So
see.
yeah, I have a fairly big part. So it's like, this other thing was easy.
Mm,
I think I learned that I'd like to do it again.
okay, that's a good one.
I learned that, and some of the things, and I would like to talk to more directors, and I did, do some directory research before that, and just ask people. And actually, one of the most useful pieces of advice I got, besides you should probably block things for your actors and try to do it early, and which is fine. And like when I worked with Gary, yeah, second, after the read through, we are blocking.
Mm,
And you may change that later, but it really helps a lot of people to have that link. So I think I also learned more about respecting other actors' process. Like some of them need to be moving to do it. Some of them just need some time to go off and do their lines. And I've noticed that before, but now it becomes important that you give them what they need, or you give them the opportunity to get what they need. Um, and I always suspected, but now I know the importance of a stage manager who is organized. That was something I was very nervous about, because I really think I do have a hole in my head in that spot. I tend to be, even when I try to do linear things like physics or mathematics or chemistry, I have a tendency to write my explanations in these like spirals that go around, and then I have to circle wherever I get to the answer, because it's just the way my brain works.
you have your own
It's
Fibonacci thing going on there.
yeah, exactly. And then somewhere in the center, there's the answer. A lot of physics teachers don't like that. They tend to be very linear people. And I'm not, but I think so. I think what I also like about directing and learning, and I think it'd be part of it, is because it's a more gestalt thing than doing a particular character. So my tendency to think in tendrils, I think, is useful,
Mm,
but it still comes down to, okay, and then now what are we actually going to do? Like we need a concrete to do. I know how to trust actors to do their thing. I didn't really have to learn that. I don't know if it would be much more challenging than working with actors um, who are not as confident, or who are not as experienced. Um, I have seen some amazing talent in people who have not taken teachings. And I think, I don't know if I've gotten over the idea of being intimidated at the idea of directing certain people.
mm.
Like if I had to direct Alex Picard or Chris Savage, I mean, I'd just be like, who am I to tell you what to do?
Yeah.
Show me what you can do. Um, uh, but there's a difference between trusting your actors and just kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, absconding on, like not doing your own obligation, which is to delve. I look forward to working on a show that I can delve into more and do more prep work beforehand.
Hmm.
Um,
And you may end up eventually having I'll use the word again, the spectrum of talent, because there are those who you can just kind of leave on their own and you have full faith and
Right.
trust in them. And there are others who you got to sit there and prod them and prod them and prod them and prod them, hold them by the hand. And
Right.
you're like, where do you not see what's going on here, folks?
Right. And I'm a little afraid of doing that. That did not come up, but that was one of the things. I can be very patient and persistent, but I can be a little impatient, and I can be cutting if I get pissy about, like basically, what are you thinking? Are you thinking? So, and I've worked with directors that I didn't like, who have actually physically moved people's body parts around and stuff.
Yeah.
Although, like, I found when I was trying to show the blocking and I was trying to explain something between my noun thing and my left-right difficulty, I actually had to like go out, trot out and do it myself. I'm like, we're going to come around this way, and then we're going to come this way. I'll put myself out there. I didn't think to bring my little chessmen. But yeah, so with somebody new, I still have some fear of squashing something that shouldn't be squashed, that might be delicate.
Ooh, very interesting.
And or also not trying to bring enough out of them with being like, okay, well, that's the best they can do. Because actually, one of the most useful pieces of advice I got was you're not going to get everything you want. Now, in this case, that wasn't because of any limitation of my actors or the script. It was the limitations of it's a 6-day process.
Yeah, good point.
So some things you're not going to get what you want. One of the things I'm sorry I didn't do was I had meant to give them a note about what do we do at the end when we bow?
The curtain call?
A curtain call note. And I know what I was going to do when I thought we were doing them each with our own. And then I forgot to say something with them. And what I wanted them to do was have Teddy between them with his paw on each hand. So he was also holding hands along the thing instead of Val trying to hold him in her arm. I would have, if we had had more time, we would have worked out a little more about Val holding him in his arm and how we want his face to appear to the audience. Except we did not have time for any of that crap. That would have been micro managing at that point. But yeah, just to come out between them and, and they come out and they do it. I'm like, because it would have been easier for them. And also I think it would have looked cute.
Yeah,
either that or don't bring Teddy. But I think Teddy, she was right.
Hella cute.
Yeah. And, and that's what's like, missed opportunity, and sometimes I see things that would be missed. I did a show recently and we had unfortunately lost our director in the middle. Somebody else had to come in and take over. Yeah. We had lost him due to illness. We ended up blocking Act 2 on the Sunday and Monday of Tech Week. Yeah. So meanwhile, we're doing stuff. And there was supposed to be this fight between, no, she's mine. No, she's mine. No, she loves me. Oh, no. And they were just kind of standing there and doing it. And so you don't know, you hate to give a suggestion to another actor if they hadn't thought of it. And the director that we ended up with had a lot going on at this point and probably wasn't. So actually, but one of the actors was also the assistant director. So I did go with him and I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, would it be too obvious a choice, do you think? Or, if you guys were like playing tug of war with her while you're fighting over who, or, just something, just some sense of, oh yeah, that'd be good. Let's do it. But, and there's a part of me that's like, no, you're not supposed to suggest directing things when you're not the director.
It's like an unspoken
but it was like,
rule,
they're
right?
missing this wonderful opportunity. But then I'm like, or is it too obvious? Maybe they're not doing it because it's too obvious, and why do the obvious thing? But it was just that everybody was so rushed at that point and just trying to get it done. So, but right. So those ideas come up and usually you don't say anything unless you're one of the actors involved. Right. And then you're constantly like, hey, let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try that. So that's one of the exciting things about possibly directing is to see that. But, one, am I going to make too obvious of choices? And then people are like, well, that was kind of schlocky,
Yeah.
Or are you going to miss something like, I missed that note to have them do that? Or, these folks might have missed that opportunity. And would anyone have noticed it wasn't there? Probably. That's the other thing. I don't know if I'm always decisive enough. And that is another concern I have. Again, was not an issue this time, I think mostly because of the pressure of the time. no, you decide it now. If it's really not working, let's fix it. But otherwise, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Let me
But
ask
heck,
you,
make it just a little.
yeah, no, I agree with you. Let me ask you, we're getting late in the tooth here.
Okay.
No, I just don't want to keep you too long, but I have one final question that intrigues me. So because you went first, you got to see all the shows, not that
Right.
you were director, so you get to see them anyway, but did you look at any of the other shows and say, oh, I wish I had gotten that one, or I could never have done that one? From your directorial perspective now, did you look at it and go, oh, what I could have done with that? Or, oh, I'm glad I didn't get that one.
Oh, I'm glad I didn't have to do the play that you were in, actually.
Oh, thank
Peter Josephson's, which I think read like poetry, a dream. It was beautiful. There was a lot to get out of it. I think I would have been very frustrated trying to find the kernels and meat of it and to direct those, although some of it was, oh my God, so beautiful. I love the scene with you guys doing the pew pew and the play scene between them. I don't think I could have done that one in 6 days. I think I would have needed like 6 days to digest that show.
Yeah.
And come up with stuff. So I'm really glad I didn't have to do that one. With Gary's show that Mary did, and she did such a marvelous job. And part of me was like, and I really like working with Kelsey. I've worked with her on stage like 3 times now, 3 or 4. And I think again, she's a marvelous, marvelous actress. She's got this wonderful naturalness to her that I just really like. And her husband can do some amazing the info dump he had to do. But anyway, there's a part of me that's like, did I give up on trying to do that one too soon? Because because it had some interest and it wasn't, like I said, I think my play is very obvious and I love doing it. But is it art? But yeah, but it is art because
it was art. Yes, it was.
I ended up just loving how they were done. I was so impressed, so very impressed with the first time playwrights, that they wrote these like plays in 24 hours. I'm impressed that anyone could do it, but to do that and not have ever done that before and have them be, the other funny show. I mean, it was one joke, but it really could be milked all the way through, just like our show was a one joke too. Hey, it's a bear, So I would have liked to have done any of them except for I remember and I hope. I don't think I could have done justice to that one. So there's that. There's probably still going to be times when I can be just like I can kind of see it and feel it, and enough to know that I can't see it clearly enough to do it. And what is frightening about doing art rather than doing, for instance, science, is that there isn't an answer. Now, in a lot of science, the science you learn in school, yes, there's answers, but a lot of science really actually, though, still has to do with being able to hold either two somewhat conflicting ideas in your mind at the same time. And also to be okay with not having answers, because the stuff that we really are doing science to do science for, we don't have the answers yet. And you can't be so uncomfortable with not having an answer that you're going to make one up or that you're going to prematurely decide on something. So with art, though, with something and so ephemeral as theater, where it is an experience, you do it and it is gone. There's no rewriting that. There's no how do you know if you're screwing it up? So there's a part of me that's like really worried that I could be screwing this up royally and I won't know. I'm too stupid to recognize that I've screwed it up.
We had that concern.
So
because the way Peter wrote it, it was very layered, and we weren't sure if the audience would buy into any of it. And to do him, we didn't talk to him, and so we just had to hope that we were really not creating a farce, but really creating what he saw, which we hoped wasn't a farce. Could have gone very badly.
Right. And was he happy with it?
He was ecstatic with it. He said it was exactly what he saw. I know.
Right.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
That's how art works finally, right? When it works, right?
Right. Well, that was one of my concerns with Greg being involved with this. And then I did ask him, did it come out? Was it what you had pictured? What? And I didn't really get a straight answer out of him. So that makes me nervous too. And that's when he said, well, Greg, the tech director is pretty upset with Greg, the writer, right now, which I can understand. It was a whole other problem. But he did neatly sidestep. How did you like it?
You might have to take him out for a cup of coffee and tweak him a bit.
They have to. But yeah, I think any of the other shows, though, I think I would have enjoyed getting my hands on, maybe. But comedy is simpler, usually, in a way, even when it's comedy that's saying something. Just because I think there's a few ways to be funny that really work, that are universally. But there's an almost infinite number of ways to be heartbroken or sad or hopeful or ambitious. I mean, drama to me is much more amorphous, and I do well with comedy, so I often get cast in them. I'm kind of a funny person anyway. So, but comedy also, because comedy is always set on changing expectations or deflection. Comedy is often a deflection.
Right.
Or unless you're doing satire, but still you're with satire, you are deflecting away from the seriousness of how much it sucks that the world is like that by laughing at it. But drama, you don't get that. It's a reflection. It's not a deflection. So doing it justice, I think, is harder. And like, I feel more ready to tackle doing, say, another comedy, even if it's a dramatic comedy, than like, I have no interest in trying to, in offering to try to direct Night Mother. It's like, oh God, no. Let somebody who's really, got some gravitas there to do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I've covered everything.
Yeah, I know I've been talking your ear off, but
it's quite all right. It's why I wanted to talk to you. I don't mind it at all. I really do appreciate your time. I mean, we went into some pretty decent stuff here, and I'm glad you were willing to open up and express your opinions, and it makes a big difference.
All right, never. Actually, I don't always know when to keep my mouth shut, which is why directing's good.
Well, it worked here tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for doing this. I did go and I've watched some of your other ones.
Oh, you did? Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate
to get an idea, and I had to see what Aaron had to say about all of us before.
Of course. Well, now you're part of the archives.
Yeah, now I'm part of the archives. It makes me feel, and being part of this, and and some of the shows that I did this year, I think I just do feel a lot like a part. The New Hampshire community and semi-pro theater, and I'm digging it. I like it.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's like,
yeah. One last thought. I was thinking earlier about how different we are from a sports team, in that you get in a sports team or any kind of team, you're with the same people all the time. But in theater, it's very rare that you're bumping into the same people in the same cast. And so these circles are always constantly kind of overlapping but never really, and there's all these people out there who kind of just periodically your circle overlaps a little, that circle, and you've got somebody new you meet. It's pretty crazy world we live in.
Yeah. That is one of the amazing, it's like a kaleidoscope of people. And right, I mean, and it's, and you've worked with some people before, so it's like, because you worked with them, and then you get to work with some other folks, and because, and there's some people I've never gotten, like, I'll always be said that Amy Agostino has given up, for the most part, acting, and I could never be on stage with her, but she's another one that just blows me away. And then, I don't know, it's like, it's actually really hard to be like, that's a good, like everyone I've done Christmas Carol with, and it's always different mixtures of cast, but everyone's been great. Everybody's been great in that role, and maybe somebody else has the role the next year, or it's see, and that's part of it. It's like, it was just so much fun. It's like, is this supposed to be work? Am I working hard enough at this? Because I'm just having a blast.
Well, that's the name of the game, hopefully, right?
Yeah,
it's not
as
painful.
Gary likes to say, it's called a play for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you, Laura. Again, I really do appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I'll get this posted. I'll let you
Sure.
know when it goes up. And if
Yeah.
there's
Okay.
anything you feel
Needs to
you
come back
wanted,
out.
yeah,
No, I was very careful not to swear. So, which usually I sound like I swear like a fishwife, but
we would
I,
have taken
I
it.
didn't know
Don't
what your
worry.
audience was.
Have yourself a great night.
And there you go. Another great one in the tank. That one's going off to the memorial. Have a great day.